Through you, Mr. Chair, I can confirm that it is 4 p.m. and our live stream and recording has begun. If you don't mind, I will begin opening the meeting with the land recognition statement.
Thank you. Thank you, Sarah.
We begin this meeting by acknowledging that the land on which we gather is the traditional territory of the Haudenosaunee and the Anishinaabe peoples, many of whom continue to live and work here today. The territory is covered by the Upper Canada Treaties and within the land protected by the Dish with One Spoon Wampum Agreement. Today, this gathering place is home to many of the First Nations, Métis, and Inuit peoples, and acknowledging reminds us that our great standard of living is directly related to the resources and the friendship of the Indigenous peoples. Through you, Mr. Chair, you may proceed with your opening remarks.
Thank you. First item is I'd like to call the meeting to order. It would also appear that we have a quorum. We have 3 members of the Committee of Adjustment. This is an electronic hearing of the Committee Adjustment for the town of Pelham. Everyone present and viewing at home will be given an opportunity to comment on the application being heard. Please address your comments and questions through the chair. This public meeting has been called to satisfy the requirements of the Planning Act and Council bylaws. Notice of this meeting has been given by prepaid first-class mail to all persons listed as owners in the last revised assessment roll within 60 meters, 200 feet, of the subject property. In addition, a public notice sign has been posted on the lands and information has been provided on the town's Committee of Adjustment webpage. Agencies commenting on applications may request that certain conditions be imposed should the application be approved. Voicing objections to these conditions will not adversely affect the committee's decision. The purpose of the application and relative correspondence will be heard, following which the applicant will be given an opportunity to address the application. Any person concerned with the application will then be given an opportunity to participate in the meeting. If you have pre-registered to speak during the public portion of the application, you will be brought into the Zoom meeting and will be unmuted. Please state your name and mailing address for the record. Please be advised, once you have finished speaking, you will be removed from the Zoom meeting room. If you are live streaming at home and wish to submit a comment during an application, you may do so by emailing clerks@pelham.ca. At the conclusion of the public portion of the meeting, these comments will be read into the record. If you submit comments after the public portion has been closed, your comments will not be considered. At the conclusion of the discussion, the committee will render a decision and advise of any applicable conditions. Specific wording of the conditions will be determined by the committee following the public portion of the hearing. Copies of decisions will be mailed to the applicant or agent and to any other person who files a written request. If you wish to be provided a copy of the decision, please contact the Secretary Treasurer in writing as soon as possible. The Secretary Treasurer's contact information is available on the upcoming PowerPoint presentation and available on the town's website. Any person, corporation, or public body has the right to appeal either the decision itself or the conditions of consent to the local appeal body within 20 days of the decision for minor variances and within 20 days of the mailing of the decision for the consent applications. Assistant Secretary Treasurer Leach, could you please provide additional Zoom information?
Sorry, can you repeat the request?
Can we proceed to the additional Zoom information?
Sorry, I don't quite understand what you mean by Zoom information.
Well, the PowerPoint presentation.
Oh, the PowerPoint presentation. Okay.
Is being conducted.
Yes, just before we get to that, you may wish to see if there's any members who have a pecuniary interest.
Is that next? Or okay. Does any member of the committee have a pecuniary interest?
I have none.
In accordance with the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act and in any of the applications considered at this hearing. Mrs. Marsh.
And I have none.
And I have none.
Thank you, Mr. Clausen. I have none. First of all, I would like to thank everyone for joining the meeting. Members of the panel today include Mr. John Clausen, Mrs. Sandra Marsh, and myself, I'm Don Cook, acting as chairman. We also have in attendance Assistant Secretary Treasurer Leach. We also have town staff, planning staff, Mr. Kenny Negg and Jacqueline Miller. Now, can we have the additional Zoom presentation?
Yes, and just before we get to that, I will confirm that we have not received any withdrawals or adjournments on tonight's agenda. And our first application this afternoon is file A37 2021P, being 105 Highway 20 East. I would please ask Ms. Miller to bring in the agent and applicant on the file and share her presentation. Committee of Adjustment hearing Tuesday, November 2nd, 2021 at 4 p.m. All Town of Pelham in-person Committee of Adjustment hearings have been canceled. Instead, the town is holding all Committee of Adjustment hearings electronically via Zoom. Please note that no decisions have been made prior to this public meeting. This presentation is based upon the Town of Pelham's Planning Department report and analysis. All comments received from the commenting agencies and the public have been forwarded in full to the Committee of Adjustment members for their consideration. Participants are reminded, please ensure your background is free from offensive or vulgar material. If inappropriate material is visible, you will be removed from the meeting. Vulgar or offensive language will not be tolerated. If inappropriate language is used, you will be removed from the meeting. Participants will remain in the meeting room until they are called to speak. Once your comments have been heard by the committee, your microphone will be muted. Once voting on an item has taken place, participants will be removed from the meeting completely. You may resume viewing the meeting live via live stream. Decorum. The Committee of Adjustment is a formal public hearing requiring decorum. This means that all comments are to be made through the chair. If you have pre-registered to speak, you will be given an opportunity to address the committee at the public portion of the meeting. If you are live streaming and wish to submit a comment live, please use the clerks@pelham.ca email address. Please note, all comments must be received during the public portion of the meeting, otherwise they will not be considered. Disrespectful comments will also not be tolerated. Please note that if decorum is lost, the meeting may be recessed and persons will be asked to leave. Public portion of the meeting. To allow for an efficient meeting, each member of the public will be given the opportunity to speak to the committee during the public portion of the meeting. Please note, after all members of the public have been given the opportunity to speak, the applicant and/or agent will have an opportunity to address the public comments and concerns at one time. Application for minor variance, file A37/2021P, 105 Highway 20 East. The subject land is located on the north side of Highway 20 East, lying east of Station Street, known locally as 105 Highway 20 East in the town of Pelham. The minor variance application requests relief from Bylaw 3867-2017, GC-275, Section 20.2F, maximum density for apartments to permit 155 units per hectare, whereas the bylaw allows 120 units. To date, the following comments have been received. A building permit is required for the proposed work. Public Works has no comments or concerns. The Niagara region has no objection, and no public comments were received at the time of writing this report. Is the variance minor in nature? The proposed variance is minor in nature as no adverse impacts are anticipated. The exterior of the building and the built form remain relatively unchanged from the original design. While the proposed increase in density is appropriate from a land use compatibility, housing type, and density perspective, adequate parking spaces to accommodate the additional units are also provided in the altered site and building layout without adversely affecting site circulation and disrupting pedestrian street view. Is the variance desirable for the development or use of the land? The proposed variance is desirable as it will help facilitate additional units, which can potentially improve the affordability of the mixed-use development project, thus allowing housing opportunities to people of diverse social groups. It will also allow for further residential intensification and provides opportunities for residents to live close to the core center of the town and be able to access services in proximity. It is noted that the amount of commercial floor area is being reduced, which provides the opportunity for additional residential units. Does the variance maintain the general intent and purpose of the official plan? The variance implements the vision for reasonable residential intensification in the downtown core area, and the development would not compromise the neighborhood's ability to be adequately serviced, maintain land use compatibility, while providing additional residential dwelling units, thus increasing variety in the available housing stock, of which are potentially more affordable to prospective purchasers. Does the variance maintain the general intent of the zoning bylaw? The requested variance will allow for the logical and appropriate use of land in providing additional apartment dwelling units in a mixed-use building located in downtown Fonthill. The additional density will not compromise additional land area for parking spaces, outdoor amenity, and open spaces. It would not result in additional building height, and the amount of commercial floor area, despite being reduced from the original plan, will be maintained in the front facade of the building fronting onto Highway 20 East. Planning staff are of the opinion that the proposal applies current planning and development principles and provides design flexibility where suitable to do so. The proposal makes efficient use of the land, will not result in the overbuilding of the property, will not alter the view, sightlines, or personal enjoyment of the subject property or any neighboring properties, and should not negatively impact the surrounding neighborhood with regard to land use compatibility, traffic, and privacy. In planning staff's opinion, the application is consistent with the PPS and conforms to the provincial, regional, and local plans. Planning staff recommend that application number A37/2021P be approved subject to the following conditions. That the applicant submit and receive approval of a site plan amendment application addressing the following: submission and approval of a landscape plan detailing landscape treatments and features, plant materials and landscape specification, landscaped buffer area, tree planting list and elevation, and any other additional information necessary for clarity. Submission and approval of a site plan providing locations for bike storage, which avoid conflicts with pedestrian movement and site circulation, adequate landscape buffer which can screen parking elements from public view, sidewalk, and adjacent properties without obstructing pedestrian view.
Thank you.
If you wish to receive a copy of the notice of decision, please contact the Secretary Treasurer in writing as soon as possible. Holly Wilford, Secretary Treasurer to the Committee of Adjustment, 20 Pelham Town Square, P.O. Box 400, Fonthill, Ontario, LOS 1EO, hwilford@pelham.ca. Thank you.
Thank you, Assistant Secretary Leach. Are there any of the representatives on this application willing to add something else to the report?
Yes, sir. I would ask Ms. Miller to please bring in the applicant and the agent. I do believe the agent has a presentation.
Mr. Marcus.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Can you hear me all right?
We can hear you, can't see you.
Yeah, I don't know what's going on with that. I don't seem to have an
Or
option.
Mr. Aziz, we can, I hope you're there also, but we...
Oh, there we go. Sorry about that. You're looking at
Aziz,
looking up
Marcus,
at me.
thank
Here.
you for joining us.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We do have a presentation if I'm permitted to share.
Certainly, sir.
All right. We're 18 months in and I'm slowly getting the hang of this. So thank you, Mr. Chair. My name is Jared Marcus. I'm here from IBI Group on behalf of the owners of the property, Ava Properties Limited. They're the developers for the Fonthill Yards project located at 105 Highway 20 East in Fonthill. By way of context, the subject lands are located in the community of Fonthill. You'll see this on the first image. You'll see Highway 20 East runs diagonally from top right to bottom left on the screen, and Station Street runs top to bottom through the middle of your screen, and the broader subject lands, of course, outlined in red here. Formerly a lumber yard, it's been demolished and remediated, and there are 23 townhouses currently constructed on the subject lands. Broadly for context, the land uses to the east of the subject lands are made up of typical commercial that you would have seen done in the 60s, 70s, 80s, etc. And further east on the south side of Highway 20, a large modern big box store plaza has been constructed. To the northeast, north, and west, you have stable residential neighborhoods. Then, of course, further southeast, you have the historical Fonthill downtown. Next slide shows the official plan context. You'll see the subject lands broadly outlined in blue. Designation is downtown transitional area, and there is a site-specific amendment or site-specific policy that allows for a maximum 6-story height and a maximum of 2,000 square meters of commercial GFA, and there are no maximum residential densities identified in the official plan. Next slide shows the zoning bylaw. You'll see here that the site boundary has been a little more refined, and this reflects just the mixed-use component of the project. The townhouses are at the north side where the RM1 zone is indicated. So the subject lands are general commercial with a site-specific that permits apartment buildings up to 25 meters or 6 stories and a max density of 120 units per hectare. Next slide gives you a bit of the historical context to the project. In 2017, an official plan amendment and zoning bylaw amendment were approved. In 2018, the site plan agreement was registered on lands, and that allowed for the overall construction of a project that featured 23 3-story townhouse units, a 6-story mixed-use building with 82 units, and approximately 1,200 square meters of commercial floor area. The overall project was approximately 1.4 hectares, and half of which applies to the mixed-use site. And that means that the density for that mixed-use site did come in at slightly under at 119 units per hectare, and with a building height slightly less than what the zoning permitted. And lastly, the site had a combination of underground and surface parking of 146 parking spaces, which of course met the zoning requirements at the time. This is the original site plan. You'll see the main component or two main components to the build with a covered walkway that doesn't show up on this image here, but the two components of the building was where the commercial was at the front, facing the Highway 20, which is at the bottom, and Station Street, which is on the left. And then there were some residential units on the ground floor, but everything else on the 5 stories above this. The next slide shows the original approved elevation drawings. You'll see this is a very historical design, historical red brick type style, some cornicing and arches, a lot of glazing, particularly along the ground floor where the commercial faces the street to provide that animation and integration with the public realm. This is, the bottom one is your image of what would look like from the inside of the site. And so that's what was approved for the mixed use site under the original approval. Now, as the developer was building the townhouses that you see at the rear of the site, they encountered a few issues that we've had to look at as we move forward with detailed design on the mixed use building. And that's, there was a really high water table. And so what's happened is that you have sump pumps with the townhouses, which is a pretty typical thing, but these sump pumps are running near round the clock due to the high water table. So the problem was that makes bathtubing or waterproofing of an underground parking garage a significantly expensive undertaking. So we had to start looking at ways to mitigate that. Another factor that played into how we're moving forward was that the original residential units were very, very large. We're talking 1,400 square feet, which is not typical of modern apartment buildings. And so they were concerned that the market may not be able to absorb that many large apartment units. And lastly, there was a concern that the 1,200 square meters of commercial space was going to be hard for the current market to absorb, given the issues with COVID, as well as a brand new big box store complex down the road. So these three things got them we had to sit down and start looking at ways to redesign the site and come up with some solutions so that we still had a marketable and an economical project. And so we had to look at, do we completely change the site? Do we work with what we've got? We met with the town, we met with the region, we got their input about what was going to be desirable from that perspective. And what we settled on was keep the building as it is as much as possible and work what's within the building and try to find a solution. And so that's how we came up with our solution, which is increase the density from 82 units to 106 units, decrease the commercial floor area from about 1,200 square meters to 470 square meters, and keep the parking the same as it is today so that we're not causing any concerns from that perspective. And so once we got with the architect, we got playing around with the building, we ended up being able to drop one floor off the total height of the building resultant with a slightly smaller building with the same mass and orientation to the street. But the result, of course, is the 153 units per hectare, which is why we're here with the revised or with the minor variance before you today. So the next two slides show you what the current version of the site plan looks like. So if you had the old version in front of you, you'd see that we've maintained the broader communal parquet in the rear, the landscaping on the east side, the public plaza space in front of the units. The building shape is largely the same with the round rotunda, the step backs of the building. We have squared off the building a little bit, but that doesn't really change how it impact or how it looks from the street. The next slide shows the current renderings, and color of the rendering notwithstanding, the design is largely the exact same as the previous iteration as well. There was a lot of articulation. You saw a lot of glazing, a lot of step back balconies on the street, different levels of height on the rotunda, as well as the middle walkway here. And largely the change was just removing the fourth floor off the building. So by and large, the project still is the exact same as it was before. We've just removed a floor and changed how the insides, the guts of the building work. And so the application in front of you is that the current zoning permits a maximum density of 120, and we're requesting a maximum density of 155 units per hectare, which would allow us to change the proposal to increase by a total of 24 residential units, and all other zoning regulations are being met. So you heard from staff as well about the 4 tests of the Planning Act. We, of course, do our analysis and come up with our opinion. Is it minor? Is it desirable? Does it meet the general intent of the zoning? And does it meet the general intent of the official plan? And we come up with the same opinion that staff did. We provide a little bit of a explanation of how variances are reviewed, numerical not being a number, but numerical being the cumulative impact of a proposed variance on adjacent streets and the municipal right-of-way, things like that. So what we find is that the building height's been reduced, so there's no new impacts from shadow or privacy. Parking ratios are met, so there's no new parking constraints being introduced by the increase. Commercial space has been reduced to coincide with the increased density, so overall traffic concerns wouldn't be seen from this change as well. So in our opinion, a minor variance can be deemed to be minor in nature. Is it desirable for the appropriate development of the land? In this case, we have a subject land that's already approved for a mixed-use development. We talked about the potential impacts of the land already. We've established that the mixed-use development's already desirable for these lands. So is a minor variance desirable? Another option we look at is a minor variance desirable for dealing with this? And so the alternative is a full-blown zoning amendment. But in our opinion, because it's so minor, because there are no associated impacts from the change, our opinion is that it is desirable to be dealt with through a minor variance. The land use is desirable for the development of the site. So therefore, in our opinion, we meet test 2. Test 3 is intent of the zoning bylaw. So when we look at the parent zoning, there's no maximum density prescribed. It was a site-specific bylaw that was implemented, or that was approved to implement a specific design at the time that introduced the maximum density. So now we're asking to change that. We're not asking to change any other regulations, we're not asking for variances from any other regulations. And so in our opinion, the intent of the zoning bylaw to implement a mixed-use development in this size, shape, and location has been met. And lastly, you have the intent and purpose of the official plan. As I mentioned before, there was a site-specific policies that were implemented for this project, and they did remove some of the development criteria that are parent to the official plan that dictate how design should happen. So we looked back at what's originally there to make sure that what we're proposing is still compliant with the official plan. And what we see is that overall, the official plan, of course, implements higher order planning policies, so provincial policy statement, places to grow, et cetera, and they all dictate build more, better use of lands, intensification, and generally the official plan directs that at least 15% of new growth should be occurring within the boundary of Fonthill, and that there is no maximum density prescribed in the parent official plan. We look further at how the official plan guides development, and there's general policies about quality of urban design, building orientation to the street level commercial, things like that. And so we look at the original design, how it was approved, and that we're not changing that original design intent. And so our opinion is that we still meet the intent of the official plan to implement more density, to ensure high quality urban design, ensure good public space or orientation with the public realm. And so in our opinion, we also meet the fourth test of general intent of the official plan. And so that, in summary, our opinion is that the variance is minor in nature. The variance is desirable and appropriate. The variance does meet the intent of the zoning bylaw, and the variance does meet the general intent of the official plan. And we would excuse me, I've got a cold. I'm starting to lose my voice a little here. But to summarize, we also agree with the staff position that this application should be approved. So thank you very much for your time, Mr. Chair. That's my comments, and I'd be happy to answer any questions from the committee.
Thank you, Mr. Marcus, for your presentation. Ms. Leach, have any pre-registered participants wishing to speak at this Zoom meeting?
Through you, Mr. Chair, we do not have any pre-registered members of the public. However, I will just check the clerks at pelham.ca email address and see if we received any emails. Mr. Chair, it is 4:27, and I can confirm we have received no emails, and therefore you can close the public portion of the meeting and move to committee input.
Thank you, Ms. Wilford. Not Ms. Wilford, Ms. Leach. I'd like a motion to close the public portion of the meeting. Can I have a mover and a seconder, please? Moved by Sandra Marsh. We close the public portion, seconded by Mr. Clausen. All in favor of closing the public portion of the meeting? Carried. Thank you very much. Members of the committee, do you have any questions you wish to ask of Mr. Marcus following his presentation, or comments on the staff report?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I would like to ask Mr. Marcus their marketing plan. They had the nice sized units. What kind of clientele are you marketing to? What caused the change there?
Mr. Marcus.
Through you, Mr. Chair, if it's all right, I'd like to kick this over to the developer. I don't generally get involved in the marketing aspect of the projects.
Mr. Aziz.
Yes, we are going to be targeting Fonthill residents primarily, Niagara residents secondarily, and outside of that, the greater GTA. We understand there's a need for more affordable condominiums in Niagara, and therefore the smaller size of the condos allows us to provide a more competitive price point.
Through the chair, these condos, the way I looked at the size, they aren't conducive to raising a family if you have 2 or 3 children. So are you marketing to just single family? I mean, affordable housing also could mean, could you get something a little less expensive if you had a family of 2 or 3 children? Making it smaller also dictates as to the type of clientele that you can get into the housing. So what kind of people do you anticipate wanting to buy this type of condo development?
Yes, thank you for that question. Primarily people downsizing, the demographics of people downsizing, and young professionals looking to enter the homeowner market as first-time homeowners.
And my next question is: we have a university right nearby. Could this wound up being involved in any type of residence or an agreement with Brock in the future?
No,
Seeing the sizes of them.
no.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Any questions, Mrs. Marsh?
I have no questions. Thank you.
Okay, I've looked at the application. It would appear there are maybe seven two-bedroom apartments being considered. That would mean how many basically everything else is single one bedroom, but I did notice there are 3 or 4. I think I counted 7 two-bedroom. Am I correct on that? Based on the plans that are submitted with the application. Mr. Marcus, do you have any number of units, single one-bedroom units, number of two-bedroom units in the buildings?
Yeah, my computer's being a little funny on me. I'm trying to figure out how to work it here. What? Yeah, I had all that information right at hand right before the meeting started so that I could answer this question, and then I had to shut my computer down. It's causing problems.
Computers are wonderful when they work.
Yeah. I knew something like this would come up and I was prepared.
I noticed originally this whole development was based on a site-specific zoning bylaw. To me, what's being asked of this committee is something which should be an amendment to the existing zoning bylaw, which should be approved by council. I realize that all the planning comments, yeah, they satisfy the provincial policy statement. They seem to satisfy our official plan. Intensification is the way to go. This apartment building to me is overkill in relation to the existing neighborhood, which is basically single family on both sides of Highway 20 currently, particularly east and west of Station Street and south of Hurricane Road. As much as I like the idea, I think this is overkill. I think this is too dense, personally, and I cannot support the granting of the variance. I will not be voting in favor of the granting of the variance. One of the other problems I see, I didn't have a copy of the approved site plan previously. I noticed on the drawing that was brought up by Mr. Marcus that the property also was granted, I would assume, an entranceway permit from Regional Road 20 by the region of Niagara, so you were able to satisfy the site plan. My only concern there is I can see a bunch of people making left-hand turns, which are going to become very difficult in that particular section of Highway 20 between the stoplight at Sobeys and Station Street. People currently are making illegal left-hand turns westbound on Highway 20 at the second, I guess it would be the closer entrance to Station Street. I'm thinking that something similar may happen to your entrance for eastbound traffic on Highway 20 trying to cross the 2 lanes. I don't know if this is going to be considered by the region as part of this particular go-around or not. I am worried that safety is being compromised and the increased units is not going to help that situation. As I said before, I cannot support the granting of the variance because I believe the granting of the variance should be a decision of council and should require an amendment to the zoning bylaw. Thank you very much. Those are my comments. Mr. Marcus, did you find out, was I correct on the seven 2-bedroom and remaining single bedroom units in the overall complex being considered tonight?
Mr. Chair, it was close. It was 8 and 96.
Okay, 896.
898.
Oh, okay, 898. Thank you very much. Are there any other comments from members of the panel? Are we ready to render a decision? If so, can I have a mover and a seconder making a recommendation on the granting or refusal of this application? Do I have a mover and seconder on this application?
Through the chair, I have some problems too. I'm just giving you a little chance to think about it.
I'm not ready to make a decision on this application. Any other comments regarding this application that the committee wish to ask questions of the applicants?
Through the chair, I have a problem with that entrance onto Highway 22, and I saw that, unfortunately, I've been in a situation where I've had an entrance to the Highway 20 was safety aspect. I've had it read to me to the region. I'm surprised that the region is accepting it, where in some areas they aren't accepting it. You have the plazas across the road. You've got the plaza next door. You already have a light there, and so you're going to have two entrances close to each other. And I almost got hit when I went to Peter Piper's there. I find it quite, I just can't believe that they're accepting an entrance that close to the plaza from what I've seen. I'll say that much.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Clausen. Any other comments, any questions to the applicant or Mr. Marcus? Yes, Mr. Marcus.
If I can just touch on that traffic concern. I mean, my firm wasn't involved in the original site plan application, but like you saw in my slide, that site entrance has always been approved in that location. So whether that was 82 and 1,200 square meters or 106 and 470 square meters of commercial, that site entrance was presumably deemed to be sufficient location, sufficient distance from the intersection, and met the region's turning movement criteria. Otherwise, I would have to assume they would have required upgrades to that road, be that turning lanes or other traffic control measures. But I can't speak for the decisions that happened at that time, but that would be my expectation given that it's an approved project.
Maybe my next question should be to Mr. Nigg. Mr. Nigg, the previous site plan, was Mr. Aziz granted an entrance permit from Highway 20 at the location as shown on the drawings submitted with this application? Mr. Nigg, Mrs. Miller.
Through you, Mr. Chair. I believe it was approved by the region in regards to the location of the entrance from Highway 20. It was also addressed in the site plan application. It was approved as well. There's not such alteration from the original entrance, so it shouldn't raise any specific concern.
Maybe our question, Mr. Clausen, and my question on the entranceway. Mr. Aziz, do you have an entrance permit from the region for the location of that entranceway off Highway 20?
Yes. When we applied for the rezone and for the site plan, we had to provide a traffic study. The traffic study justified and supported the entranceway off Highway 20. And the traffic study emphasized looked at the commercial as well and the density from commercial. Here, what we're doing is we're reducing the commercial by more than half, which we believe will actually lessen the flow of traffic coming in off Highway 20.
Potential. My next question, I have one other question. I noticed in one of the documents that came with the application that the no parking stalls were related to a restaurant, where a parking stall, according to the bylaw, every 4 persons requires a parking spot. I would assume that you're not going to have or cite a restaurant in the commercial property.
Absolutely not.
Even though the existing zoning bylaw does allow restaurants.
Absolutely not. No.
Okay, I have your assurance on that one. Mr. Meg, I want that to be noticed, and also the building department to notice that the developer's not proposing a restaurant, because it may affect the number of parking stalls that you may or may not have.
It would affect a lot of things. It would affect volume. It would affect the mechanical systems we have to set up, ventilation. It's too much.
Plumbing.
No, it's just going to be light commercial offices, among other things.
Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you for your response on the entranceway also. Any other questions from the committee members?
No, I to the chair that they've had an entrance permit and they've gone through it. I'm prepared to make a motion that we accept the proposal as written to allow the intent and how shall we say it, the density modification for more units as written.
Do I have a seconder?
And I will second that.
Seconds it. Mr. Clausen, you have lots of good reasons for granting the application?
Well, I'm not here to be a designer. If the region's happy, they think it's safe, it's not for me to disagree with them. I'm here to look at the rules and regulations in the town with the bylaw on that, and I will not get involved into design problems. I could explain to them how to waterproof inexpensively. There's a lot of things, but I'm just looking at what I've been told to look at, and based on what I see, I don't have a problem with it. Thank you.
Okay. Seconder, Mrs. Marsh, all in favor of granting the application?
Thank you.
Carried.
Through you, Mr. Chair, I would just ask the committee for clarification regarding the reasons pertaining to the 4 tests specifically.
Basically, I would suggest that the usual reasons: the variance is minor in nature, the exterior and built form remain relatively unchanged, no adverse impacts are anticipated. The intent of the zoning bylaw appears to be maintained. The intent of the official plan is being maintained. The proposal is desirable for the land as the increased residential intensification. That's what I disagree with, but anyway, it will facilitate additional units which may improve affordability. The application is granted without prejudice to any other application in the town. No objections were received from commenting agencies or abutting property owners. The Committee of Adjustment considered the written oral comments. The Planning Act test is minor. The applicant is aware the site plan amendment application is required. Mr. Clausen, were the conditions listed in the planning report, were those amenable to you? Would those be the conditions we should be adding to the granting of the application?
No, let me, I just had it here in front of me. Where is it? Basically, the main thing is there was no objections from anybody. Nobody, either they didn't read it or they have no problem with it. All the people in the surrounding area. So everything in official plan, if I listened to Mr. Marcus correctly, everything was met in official plan except for the density of the apartments or the dwellings. They lowered the building 1 story. So if we go with all the other the way that it's written, I don't have any problem with it. I mean, quite honestly, if we didn't give this, they could go and get the official plan amended. So it's a desirable, and quite honestly, based on what was done before, I think the main thing is here the landscaping and the provisions they're providing. Other than that, I have no problems with it.
Okay, so basically the conditions are landscape treatment features, plant materials, landscape specifications, landscape buffer area, tree planting, listed elevation, and other information. I did notice in the reading that there were some comments made by the regional planning departments related to things that were maybe probably covered off in the site plan agreement. So with that being said, I guess we're all set on this one. Mr. Aziz, Mr. Marcus, thank you for attending. Your variance has been granted, and now you just have to wait for the period, the next 20 days. And with that, thank you very much.
Thank you for your time.
And we will basically get to the next item on the agenda, which, let me see here.
Through you, Mr. Chair, the next item on the agenda is the approval of minutes.
Okay.
And for
We
approval,
have no applications for consent. We have minutes for approval. The minutes of the meeting of Tuesday, October the 5th. In attendance were Mr. John Clausen, Sandra Marsh, and Brenda Stan. Can I have a mover or a seconder to accept the minutes as printed?
I will move that we accept the minutes.
Marsh, seconded by Mr. Clausen. In favor of approving the minutes? All in favor? Carried. I can't vote because I wasn't in attendance.
thank you.
Okay, and with that, we are going to ask for an adjournment. Can I have a move? Can I have a motion to adjourn the meeting? Moved by Mrs. Marsh. Seconded by Mr. Clausen.
second.
All in favor of adjourning the meeting? Carried. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. And the meeting of the Committee of Adjustment is ended.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Have a good evening, everyone.
Thank you.